So, I've heard this rumor that Shrek 5 is gonna come out sometime around 2026. As I've heard a rumor that it's been a decade since the franchise's fourth installment premiered in 2010, but I understood that it was originally announced in 2016, as I'm thinking the Shrek cast might be expected to return. As I heard a rumor that ever since I saw Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, in case Shrek could get involved in that art style, since then I've understood that I wanted to do something interesting about why Puss in Boots 2 could be the Shrek 5 that never was. But it completely changed the story and tone of Shrek 5, making it a more true family film within his character arc. It's kind of creative for its outlook. It's a lot better than Velma, in my opinion, but anyways, we did talk about what happened to the original first film from 2001 and its tragic backstory that began around the early 90s. So, back in 1991, Steven Spielberg first conceived Shrek as an idea about a grumpy green ogre who wanted to be a knight in shining armor. In what this film was entirely different, because it was originally going to be a traditionally 2D animated film. Like, the rumored Bill Murray and Steve Martin were going to play Shrek and Donkey, and they convinced to bring the project of wanting to hire John H. Williams, Jeffrey Katzenberg, and Aaron Warner with the help of David Geffen. And it was entirely different throughout the year 1996, throughout this early prototype that was developed around that year 1995. So in this 1995 Shrek script, it looked a bit very different to what I expected it to be. So in the original version of Shrek, I've heard a rumor that Shrek, who was originally going to be portrayed by the rumored Chris Farley, was originally going to be a teenage knight who wanted to be a warrior knight in shining armor, apart from being a social outcast living in a garbage dump with a talking donkey. In what he was going to be voiced by the rumored, I think the rumored Steve Martin would get involved in that as well. And I discovered that Janae Garofalo was originally going to portray Princess Fiona, would have a backstory that involves around Fiona running away to get to the forest, where she was tricked by the fairy godmother to drink a potion that would turn her human, and it didn't work. And she was stuck being an ogress, so that Shrek can find a way to pretty much cure her with an antidote. And what happened is that Lord Farquaad, who was going to be voiced by Alan Rickman, was intended to be some sort of business tycoon industrialist who wanted to bet Shrek to pretty much rescue Fiona unless he could kill a dragon in his shining armor costume that he built from scrap metal. And then what happened is that it was still in development, and then ever since I've learned that Chris Farley recorded nearly all of his dialogue in the original script, he tragically died in 1997 from a drug overdose. And what happened is that Spielberg left the project right after he chose to leave this script behind. Even though Spielberg's Shrek would have been a much good film, as I really expected in the final 2001 product, I've understood that Andrew Adamson and Vicky Jensen got on board to produce their version of Shrek, which would be totally different to what I saw in the original version of Shrek. And I've heard some speculated rumors that reportedly, just because Donkey's getting a spin-off movie series of his own, that means I have some rumors and casting choices. I think I've heard some rumor that after Alan Rickman stepped down from portraying Lord Farquaad right after Farley's death, and it was probably due to his commitment to Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, in which I've heard a rumor that there is a reboot in the works by now then HBO Max itself, which is now called Max Original. And I've heard a rumor that might be an animated series inspired by Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Speaking of that, I've heard some sort of rumor that, much like War of the Rohirrim, which will be inspired by combining both Spider-Verse and Arcade together, this film combined tons of squash and stretch with Disney-esque animation to make a really good movie. And I'm guessing that when Shrek first got released in France at the Cannes Film Festival on May 12, 2001, a lot of people praised this movie, and it would later be released 4 days later in the United States and worldwide in the following month, which was June 2001, and I kind of enjoyed this movie. Throughout those pros, the plot was mostly about Shrek, as I noticed that the casting was quite right this time. I noticed that Chris Rock was originally going to portray Donkey, and then he turned down because of his commitment to Osmosis Jones, and I think Eddie Murphy nailed it. For some reason that Cameron Diaz and John Lithgow got along with each other, because in the final product, the embittered ogre finds his home in the swamp overrun by fairytale creatures, vanquished by the obsessive ruler Lord Farquaad. But with the help of Donkey, he makes a pact with Farquaad to rescue Princess Fiona in exchange for regaining control of his swamp. Since then, this movie skyrocketed at a box office budget of $491.8 million, and its success helped establish DreamWorks Animation to conquer Disney once and for all, when it won the Academy Award for Best Animated Screenplay and Best Animated Feature, and it earned 6 nominations at the BAFTA Awards for Best Adapted Screenplay, and they decided to let the Library of Congress to give Shrek the preservation in the National Film Registry for discovering why it was brilliant. I loved the chemistry between Mike Myers and Cameron Diaz because they fell in love with each other, and I noticed that Mike dedicated his life using his Scottish accent, that he originally used his Scottish accent not in Wayne's World because he didn't want to use it, so he used his Scottish accent for Austin Powers. That for some reason that I'm not the biggest fan of Austin Powers, because I know I'm sorry for watching it, but it's about discovering why I can't glitterize myself to watch it again. Well, it's too bad I didn't got the DVDs, so that's a shame. So, hilariously, I've understood that they've intentionally decided to not use motion capture and let Pacific Data Images complete the animation itself. And I also discovered that the soundtrack was amazing. Throughout the awesome marketing and home media, I liked its soundtrack because its critical response is really good, and I loved it. And there are tons of nitpicks discovering why Shrek dealt with prejudice and fascism, which was done right, than what the Mario movie did wrong. I've learned that it was really good. But as well as Farquaad, he's quite loathsome, and they based Farquaad off of Michael Eisner of the Disney company. And I also learned that Prince Charming was originally going to be portrayed by Jared Leto, and then he turned down the role because he wasn't quite right to be involved in an animated film, so that Rupert Everett would play Prince Charming in the sequel Shrek 2. I know they forgot to put Prince Charming and Puss in Boots in that movie as well. And despite some nitpicks and there are tons of adult-oriented humor that wasn't aimed for younger children or like those toddlers or babies, and that's one of the last nitpicks I can think of. Despite the decently good soundtrack, like they had "I On My Way" by the Proclaimers, and most notably All Star from Smash Mouth, which was originally used in 1999's Mystery Men. And the special effects are kinda amazing, that they wanted to parody fairy tale adaptations and primarily a bunch of animated Disney films, because it was really good that the first time since 1953's Peter Pan, they've done it to make history quite right. I'd say this was really fun for me to handle it, but despite the nitpicks of what I believed in this movie, I think, what's the right number of Shrek I could give? I think I'm gonna go with... Wait. Aha, there's a new number I can think of. 10.5. There. Now I'm going to put 10.5 out of 10. There you go. I finally got the right number of what I saw. So I'm gonna give Shrek a 2 thumbs up, 10.5 out of 10. Because it's a masterpiece to begin with. So, with that out of the way, I realized that this was really good for me to enjoy this movie. But tomorrow I have to go to college, and yeah, that's okay. So, bye-bye!